Okay, in this video we're going to cover 4 things. We're going to cover flashing, roof panels, screws, and then what you can use for cap in place of their expensive cap. Okay, when you're going to flash between a roof and a vertical wall, it's best to use some kind of metal. You can use synthetic, but synthetic doesn't hold up. So what we get is, this is 1 foot wide, 50-foot roll of aluminum. And the aluminum was actually cheaper than the galvanized steel, about half as expensive. And what you're going to do is end up with a panel. Roof panel is going to go right up against the wall. Now let's say this is let's just pretend this is a 12-inch piece rather than a 6-inch. So what you're going to do is take it, you're going to make a hard bend, not a soft bend. It's a soft bend on the synthetic. What you want is a hard bend, like so. So you take your, in this case it's 24 feet, but you're going to, say you're doing a 14-foot run on your roof. You take a 14-foot piece of aluminum, just under 14 feet, cut off a couple inches or so. And you're going to put it on a sharp edge and bend it right down the length of the 14 foot. So let's just pretend this is 6 inches by 14 feet. It'll actually go into the corner like so. You put it under the metal, not over it. You're not shedding water like this. It goes underneath. After you lay your panel down and you screw it down, you can come back and you can caulk this with some kind of permanent caulk, not roofing cement. Use like a good silicone or siliconized acrylic, but silicone's fine. And you're going to caulk that edge after you tack this down first. You're going to tack on the extreme parts. You're going to tack here and here, not in here. You could actually lay down a bead of caulk and you look at your panel where your flat is, right about there. Let's see what that is. That's 3 inches in from the edge. That's where that flat is. Same there, 3 inches. You could run a heavy bead 3 inches in from the edge, so when you put this panel over it, it's actually pushing down into the caulk. Now, as far as the panels go, if you're using 8-foot panels for 14-foot run, you got to use 2 panels, right? That means you're going to have to overlap panels. The upper panel goes over the lower panel, and you should have at least a 6-inch. Those are 6 inches. You need a 6-inch overlap minimum. If you're using two 8-foot panels, then you have 1.5 feet of overlap. So what you want to do at that point is you run a heavy bead of caulk about 3 inches up, half of that 6 inches, 3 inches up from the edge. You could run a bead within 1/2 inch of the edge and then another one 3 inches up. So when you drop the panel on, you get a continuous water seal. Two runs of caulk are better than one, extra insurance. That's how you overlap your panels. Now, what I do, if you take a look up the roof there, you'll see that I'm running screws on both the high parts of the panel and the low parts, but only on the top edge and the bottom edge, not anywhere else between the top and the bottom edge. You have to do it on the bottom edge on the valleys because you get so much wind in this area. The wind will pick this panel up and rip it right off unless you have a lot of screws along the edge. If you look at these panels right there, I'm using only one line of screws right in the middle of the panel. These are 14-foot panels or thereabouts. So halfway down I've run screw holes only on the high parts of the panel, not the low parts. The high parts you won't get water infiltration as easily. On the low parts you will. Now if you have extra wind, you'll put, instead of the one screw between the top and the bottom, you might put 2, you might put 3. 2 would put one right about there and about here. So that's probably enough for any wind, but I figure here we can get away with 1 between the top and the bottom, because we're putting the extra screws. You can see up there, if you look up there, you can see you got 1 screw on the rise, and you have a screw between the 2 rises in the valley. So we got plenty of screws running along there to hold that panel on. Now, as far as the screws go, the length depends on how much insulation you've got under the panel. I've got 3 screws here, 3 different lengths. Got a 3-inch, a 2-inch, and 1.5 inches. Now, because I do not have extra insulation between the metal panel and the roof, I can get away with the 1.5 inches on the valleys, but not on the rises. The rises I use a 2-inch, and for people who are using insulation, if you have say a 1/2 inch of insulation between the roof and the panel, you could get by with the 2-inch on the rises, and you could still get by with your 1.5 inches on the valleys, top and bottom valleys. You still have enough distance in here for a 1/2 inch of insulation. If you go with 3/4 inch or you go with 1 inch insulation, you're going to have to go to a 2.5 on your rises or you may even have to go to a 3-inch, depending on how much insulation you put on there. If you're going with 1 inch of insulation, it'll bring this down to about there. So you really want 2 3/4 or 3-inch on your risers. And you still want like a 2.5-inch on the valleys, even with 1-inch insulation in there.
Mm-hmm.
For Miracle's roofs, we used 1/2-inch insulation. So the 2-inch, I would go with 2 1/4 to 2.5 on the rise, and then a 2-inch in the valleys. Shorter ones will work, but I like more screw under the wood because she has 3/4 or 1-inch wood she's going through. This is only 1/2-inch plywood. Okay, that covers the screws. The placement, you can actually see up here where I've put a few of the center screws across. I've gotten that far.
Mm-hmm.
So those are plenty, and each of these screws, if you look closely at them, each one has a little rubber grommet. They have a metal washer and a rubber grommet, and that rubber grommet will actually keep the rain out if it's squeezed down enough. You don't want to over tighten them, but you want to tighten them enough so that that grommet pushes out just barely underneath the metal washer. It's gonna, as you compress it, it'll squeeze out a little bit. So it's got to be at least even with the metal washer or slightly wider than the metal washer, but not by much. Last thing we have to cover is the ridge cap. If you look at this house, you see we have all Boston ridges up here on these two sections, so we'll go with the Boston ridge, which is a bigger ridge than most people use. I'm going to put the Boston ridge up there, and that's pretty easy. You just lay the piece out and you come down and screw it into just the rises on the panel, not on the flats, because this panel goes up there, comes down like so. You still have your air space if you want air space, but then you go through this point on your cap through the rise in the vertical run. So there, 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 etc. And put one screw through on each rise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That'll lock that ridge piece on so no wind is going to grab a hold of that. Otherwise it could get under there, rip that panel right off. So this is basically what it'll look like. These are going to go right over these Boston ridges we already have in place. And you can see it's only 1.5 inches more on each side, 1.5 inches beyond the 16-inch. I believe that's a 16-inch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a 16-inch Boston ridge. So you're going 19 inches. This does not have to be cut. I wouldn't trim these. It looks fine the way it is.
And they can be overlapped? Yeah.
We're going to overlap. We have three of those 16s are going to go up there. Put the two ends on first, The center overlaps the others by a few feet.
And put a bead of caulk under.
Yeah, same thing. Same thing here. I'm using 3 pieces, so you have 2 end pieces put on in the center, drop it right over, and you can run 2 beads like so and like so. Drop that panel on. That isn't going anywhere.
So they're going to want to cover up their metal roofing when it comes in to keep it dry so that they can just use it and not have
You
to...
don't want it to freeze up.
Right. Freezing together, yeah.
That's how you put your ridge piece on. If you're using smaller lengths, 8-foot lengths, you can easily overlap it.
Mm-hmm. So up there, it's just going to be the metal on metal, right?
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's a wooden center.
Oh, it is. That is the wooden
You have
center.
a wooden ridge up there.
Right. Okay, I remember.
So if you want, I can take that up and show you what it'll look like. There.
So you've got these guards here, these wooden guards, so you can do exactly that. Just lean things on it, like the ladder.
This is how you climb up on a slippery metal roof and not slip off.
Yes.
I haven't seen any shoes that'll grip this stuff yet.
Uh-uh.
Maybe, Gumi deck shoes or something. Maybe those will work. I haven't seen anything yet. So I just made up. I can say I put up a wooden edge along there, temporary wooden edge that these ladders butt up against, and they allow us to climb up the slippery roof.
Got it? And do it on a non-windy day.
This metal's sharp, so wear gloves or something like I'm not doing.
And I see he's protecting the roof from the ends of the ladder, the metal ladder, with rags or something wrapped around the ends, so it won't scratch up the finish on the roof.
I've got rope and looks like put rags and ropes around the 2 ends so those don't scratch up the roof. You can see what this ridge will look like when it's up.
Oh, yeah.
Basically 18 inches on each side. It'll work just fine, and like I said, put 1 screw at each crossing point. That's where we use our 3-inch screws. We've got 2 inches right here and here, It just arrives. So you need 3-inch screws to put the cap on.
And what tool do you use to get the screws on?
I'm just using a hand ratchet.
Okay.
Hand ratchets are fast enough.
Okay.
If you want to do it fast, get a cordless screwdriver. That'll look just fine.
Yeah.
That's about it for today. Like I said, you better make sure you are set up with your ladders. It's really important to have that wooden butt edge down there.
Yep.
Lay your ladders on there so you can walk up on this stuff and work on it.
Yes.
Because you, especially like today with all this mist and water on, you could never step on this stuff. When I'm working up on the ridge, I can sit down on this stuff and go zipping down the panel on my ass just because your clothes don't grip this at all.
You used a similar system to this when to lean the metal roofing on, didn't you?
Those are just little
just the little pegs to hold the sheets on.
Yep. Now just to line them all up along the bottom edge.
Yep.
But that's my plan, and safety comes first. Always safety first. Okay, that's it for today, and we'll see you on the next one.